Welcome in, LSU fans, to another edition of the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon, and that is Glen West. As we get ready to talk a little regional baseball preview, Glenn, it is finally here. We have been talking baseball season all along. We appreciate everyone who's tuned in along with us here. But man, this is kind of the part of the season, or should I say the third part of the season. You have your non-conference, you've got your SEC play, and man, now you're getting ready for some potentially awesome opportunities to advance and farther into the tournament. But you got to take care of business this weekend, Glenn. And I guess I'll lead it off with this, man. I was actually asked this question today on a radio show. I thought, like, what was the immediate reaction when you saw this regional play out? Um, I will start it off like I kind of think LSU got on paper, no things can happen, kind of got a favorable draw compared to some other regional hosts. But just guess what was your reaction when you saw the field that's going to be coming down here to Baton Rouge?
Yeah, so I mean, just how this thing played out, and those who've watched it know how it played out. But LSU was one of the last regionals to kind of get announced, and so
Yeah.
actually, as they were kind of going through the list of everything, one of our colleagues, Michael Cobble over at WBRZ, leaned over to me and said, "Glenn, how many teams they got left here, man? how many more we got left to go here? Who's going to be on the list?" I was like, "Well, maybe Dallas Baptist. They haven't been called yet, and
Yeah.
so." Figured Dallas Baptist would be one. That was a very popular pick for LSU here over the last week or so, as they're kind of solidified their top eight seeding. But yeah, look, I think when you go down the line here, Rhode Island, Long Island, Rhode Island, and Little Rock, those are the two worst seeds of their seeding. So the little in terms of RPI. So
Yeah.
Rhode Island has the worst third seed RPI, and Little Rock has the worst four seed RPI. So
Yeah.
definitely some favorite matchups there for LSU. They're going to be favored in this thing heavily, I think. But as this thing was getting announced, my eyes just couldn't help but go to Jay Johnson and kind of watching his face throughout the entire time. And he's somebody that keeps it pretty stoic for the most part, and kind of stern, and doesn't really let off a whole lot of emotions. He had a big smile on his face, and that could have been just partly because LSU had already secured their top 8 seed, and just getting to be there with his team and whatnot. But I think he likes this matchup for LSU. I think the players do. And they're just excited to get to play some more baseball in Alex Box. I think,
Yeah.
coming in, we'd really been talking about this for a couple weeks. I think we thought that LSU had done enough after that South Carolina series where they took 2 out of 3. Obviously, anything can happen during tournament time, but certainly getting that win over A&M and Hoover, I think, really solidified it for LSU. And they come in as the 6th seed overall, and they're behind 5 other SEC teams or 4 other SEC teams. It's crazy how many SEC teams there were that were just being rattled off going down the line. So it's a tough deal, man, and that's something that Jay Johnson has talked about religiously, just how difficult those 10 weeks are and how they prepare you for this time of the year. And so we're fixing to get a good look at LSU and kind of what the last 3 months have taught us about this team and how that will translate here to the next 3 weeks of play, because that's really what all this boils down to. You did your job in getting the top 8 national seed, and now you have to go out there and play ball and play it consistently.
Yeah. You talk about playing consistently. We'll get into kind of some of the themes that you want to see, and we all both want to see this weekend. Just to kind of talk a little bit more about that seeding, though, or I guess the regional in general. Glenn, I was looking, and I know you kind of wrote a piece on this and everything. Just kind of looking at some of the matchups. Like, look, Little Rock is a team that maybe the RPI is deceiving a little bit just because of how they're playing currently. I mean,
Yeah.
kudos to them. They're a really good story in terms of what they've been able to do to win the Ohio Valley. But I don't know. It's just interesting. The question was posed to me. This was not an LSU radio show or LSU coverage area. The person said, "What did you think of the regional announcement?" And then, who in the world is Jay Johnson lining the pockets of to get that type of regional? And I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to answer that second part,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things. It does set up, I think, in a perceived expectation, right? Of I actually looked at this. FanDuel had the early odds. I think LSU's like a minus 390 right now, so pretty heavily favorite to advance to the super regional. when you look at this, Glenn, when you look at the matchups, and obviously, like you talked about, what I talked about earlier, you wrote a piece on this. Look at the prospective teams here. I mean, is this more a case of, and I kind of lean this way, that LSU just needs to take care of business, worry about yourself. If you play the game the way you should know how to play it, everything should fall in line? Or is there really is that just a big storyline kind of heading this weekend? Just take care of yourself, and you should be pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. Look, Dallas Baptist and Rhode Island are pretty good offensive teams. I won't
Mhm.
take that away from them. Rhode Island, in particular, has some guys. You know, if you go and read our piece that we put up this afternoon, um, very highly touted in terms of just the stats and how many free passes that they've been able to draw. I think they had 342 walks and hit by pitches this year, which is top 10 in the country. I believe it's number 7. You look at Dallas Baptist and the consistency they have throughout their lineup. They have a 3-headed monster that I think is combined for 50 home runs and close to 200 RBIs this year. So you're going to have to keep those guys in check if you run into them in the second game. But
Mhm.
I just think this really comes down to LSU being themselves at home. And at home, they have been a wildly different team than they have been on the road. And I think they've been arguably one of the best teams in the country, if not the best team in the country, when they've gotten to play inside Alex Box. And so there's the consistency element of it's just been cleaner. Offensively, you're being able to get guys on base pretty consistently, and you come through with your magic moments here every once in a while where you go back to the Tennessee game in game 1 where you look like you were down and out, and then you come up with the big walk-off grand slam there from Jared Jones, and just things like that seem to always happen at Alex Box for LSU, and that certainly gets heightened at postseason time as well. So I think if LSU should have no problem getting through this regional. From everything that I've researched on these teams today, I spent a couple hours diving in each one and looking at the stats and the players and just kind of the trends that they have coming into this game or coming into this weekend. I think offense is going to be the one that rules the day this weekend
Yeah.
for a lot of these teams that want to try to advance. And so LSU, I think, is in a very how do I say this? They're in a very good spot, just in terms of the pitching and how that matches up with opposing offenses. We can dive into that a little bit more, but I like where they're at right now in terms of being able to get this thing going through Alex Box Stadium, and then having the pitching staff performing the way that it has over the last couple of weeks gives me a lot of optimism that this will be something that LSU can handle pretty easily this weekend.
If we leave the weekend, whether it's a clean sweep of the regional or however it is, Glenn, would you feel more comfortable if it was dominant pitching, which it can be a balance of both, but it was just dominant pitching that won LSU the series or the weekend, or if it was an offense that really woke up and really just flexed their muscles of what we've seen they can be? But man, what would you leave the weekend feeling more comfortable about your prospective chances in a super regional? It's got to be pitching heavy, or if the offense really kind of carried a lot of the momentum?
I would probably lean pitching just because I don't think that the pitching staffs this LSU offense will face this weekend are ones that
Mm.
should give LSU that much trouble. Like if we say that, but then they also had really a tough time at Columbia a couple
Yeah.
weekends ago, and that was not a very stellar pitching staff whatsoever. But I just think that the offense will come at home this weekend. Like, to me, I want to see these pitching staffs go out and dominate offenses that have been really good in their leagues and very good and during their seasons. Whether it's Dallas Baptist or Rhode Island, Little Rock, I'm not too concerned about, just because I think you're going to throw Kate Anderson on Friday and he's going to go out there and give you 6 or 7 innings of really good baseball, and you're able to really pull away from those guys pretty early. That would be my guess right now of what happens on Friday in the afternoon game. Really, that 2-3 matchup, the winner of that that gets to play LSU, that's the one that I'm going to be looking at. Is like, okay, what does Anthony Ianson, what does
Mhm.
Jaden Newt, what does Chase Shore, Zach Cowan, Kason Evans, all these guys who have come on strong for you here. Some guys for the majority of the season, some guys here as of late. Um, this is the time where it all has to kind of click on the pitching side of things, and you can You can survive, I think, in Omaha being an okay offensive team. You can't survive if you're not a good pitching team in Omaha.
Fair.
Like it's just the ballpark just does not allow you to uh, to be a bad pitching team. So I think that they have a really good opportunity here to make a statement with their pitching staff. Hopefully, they get out of here without having to use a whole bunch of guys throughout 4 or 5 games, and they're able to just clean this up in 3. But I feel really good about where they're at pitching wise, and I would say if they have a good pitching performance this weekend, it would mean probably a little bit more than if they were to mash the ball for 10 runs a game kind of deal.
Yeah, I was leaning more towards the offense, but I do want to acknowledge, I guess, in my counter argument to it would be is like you mentioned, like no disrespect, this isn't what the same pitching staffs you've been facing for the past 7-8 weeks, like
No.
probably even close to that. So, although Michael Bucknam for Dallas Baptist can get it up there in terms of his velo, he's
It
looked
was
good at times.
96, 97, yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's been sitting mid 90s for
But
a
does
good portion.
LSU even get a chance to face him, or do they pitch him in the
True.
2-3 game against Rhode Island? So like, there's some
Yeah.
questions there as to what happens. So
So the pitching for me, I originally had said hitting because I think there is an element, Glenn. We can take this as you left Hoover, and this has been a theme over the past month or so. It's just that the hitting is just not quite there. It's not that it's. I want to say this and be real. Like it's not that it's awful. The offense is not awful. That's a little bit of an over, I think exaggeration. It feels like it's very close, and it's just like, man, if they can just tinker a little bit here, it's gonna explode because we know the potential of it. Like, I'll say this, and we can get in this conversation. Like, for me, a guy that could really benefit this weekend because look, nationally, if LSU just wins the whole thing, sweeps it clean, no frill, no drama, moves on the next round, people are like, okay, well, yeah, the regional was easy. This is what they should have done, and that's true. That's what championship level teams do. But within reading in between the lines there, if a guy like Stephen Milam heats up, at this point, Glenn, I don't really care who's throwing against him. If he can do that, that is a positive step. So I think for certain guys, maybe you could say if they have a big weekend, regardless of who's on the mound, they just kind of need, I guess, some good vibes coming out of the weekend offensively.
yeah, I mean, look, I played some baseball growing up. You played baseball all the way through college. I heard hitting is contagious. I don't know if
Yeah.
hitting is contagious or if that's just a baseball myth there, but I think it can carry over. And if they can get going a little bit here at the plate, build some momentum for next weekend, if they're able to survive this weekend, of course, we're making a lot of assumptions right now. But
Yeah.
I think that this regional is, if LSU doesn't win this regional, uh, it would be massively disappointing. It would be massively disappointing. They have too much talent to let one of these other teams that are come in here and win. So I think that when you look ahead to what they could be facing, whether it's Clemson, whether it's Kentucky, whether it's somebody else in that portion of their bracket next weekend, like they have some. If they have some good vibes offensively, I think that will be meaningful, and
Yeah.
then they will be able to continue to build on that, because I do think a part of this is if you're lucky enough to get to Omaha in 2 weeks. If we're talking about this team in 2 weeks' time and they've clinched a berth to Omaha and going back there, offenses struggle in Omaha. Like that Wake Forest team a couple of years ago that LSU played, they did not have a very good showing in Omaha offensively after really dominating offensively throughout the majority of that season
Hmm.
at their own ballpark. So I think that if you can have those good vibes going into that Omaha, maybe it carries over a little bit and you're a little bit more consistent. And you can just take some pressure off the pitching staff, because I do think this pitching staff is going to have to be the thing that carries LSU, however far they may go. Like
Yeah.
I think that we've gotten to that point this year where that's the strength of the team. And if you just read between the lines of what LSU coach Jay Johnson and what a lot of the players have said, one of the things they've consistently told us over the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's, all we got to do is just be a little bit better. If we can just get to 5 runs, just get to 6 runs,
Yeah.
the pitching will take care of the rest. Like that's the message that I've been hearing over the last couple of weeks. And,
Yeah.
which, it's not where Jay Johnson wants to be, because he's definitely more of an offensive minded coach, but I think he understands just how great this pitching staff has been over the last month, and how much those guys are going to have to be the main part of LSU having success in this tournament. So I think that I've already forgotten where we were going with this. What questions you have? I
Well,
mean, what?
no, I
Yeah,
mean that's it. You summed it up. You summed it up, and it kind of. I will say this. So that was a good synopsis. I think you did mention we were kind of getting too far ahead of ourselves there
we are, we
in
are.
the conversation. But like you said, I think it would be a massive disappointment, and we were talking about that, and it kind of led me into this next thought of, baseball's a crazy game, and RPIs. I don't want to say you can throw them out the window, but man, when you get to postseason baseball, anything can happen. Glenn, I'm going to give you my one concern, and you tell me your one concern. Of how LSU could lose this thing. And a lot of people are maybe not going to talk about that because the regional papers seems fairly, easy. I will tell you this. One thing I know about Dallas Baptist is I think that they play a brand of baseball that's very fundamentally sound. I think Rhode Island, looking at some things like you mentioned with that offense, they could take advantage of things. Going back to the original question, I think where LSU could get hurt is if they have some mental lapses, base running errors, situational baseball is not there, which we have seen out of them, but just some of these, I guess, careless errors where
Some
it opens
defensive
the
blunders.
door
Yeah,
and cracks the door for somebody to make some noise. And like in postseason baseball, man, all you need is a window of opportunity at times. So I think that's my big concern. That's where I think LSU could lose this,
yeah.
weekend if they let that happen. Do you sit there with that? Is there another thing that you're maybe a little concerned about? Or I guess the question is how, if LSU loses this, what in what way? Like what would be one of the factors?
Yeah, no, it's a great point to bring up because this team has been prone to not only just base running errors, but they have had a couple of defensive blunders that have cost them some games. And look, I want to say this has been a pretty good LSU defensive team, and Jay Johnson stated that throughout the entirety of this season how pleased he's been with how consistent LSU's been defensively. But when the errors have cropped up on this team, it's usually led to runs for other programs
Yeah.
or for other teams, and even if it's a few and far between kind of deal here where you make maybe one error or something in the entire weekend, maybe you make just one error, but that error costs you a run or two. And all of a sudden, a 7-4 game becomes a 7-6 game late, and you're kind of in a treasure, a really kind of tough spot against one of these teams. And yeah, I think that's when things get tight, and you got to play. This team, I think, has faced enough good baseball to know what it's going to take to win those kinds of games. They played in a lot of one-run games. Jay Johnson, one of the things that I took away from his press conference when we were meeting with him on Monday was there haven't been a whole ton of blowouts. I mean, you go back to that midweek
Yeah.
game against I can't even remember who it was that they got run ruled by, but they haven't been blown out a ton this year. And and some of that's just been because they played down to their competition at times. Some of it's been just really good baseball against two really good teams in the SEC. But LSU has been able to be in these kind of tight games, and they've won some, they've lost some. But I really do think that just the way that this regional is lined up, it really favors them to be able to come out on top of this thing. But to your point, like defensive blunders, base running errors, just not being mentally, I guess, aware of situational baseball
Yeah.
at different times, that could certainly play a factor into this thing, which is why these guys have just got to come in and be mentally focused and just be sound. And if they play their game, then they'll win this thing no problem. If they don't, then they're going to struggle, and they might drop a game early in the weekend, and now you're really got backs up against the wall. That's the one
Yeah.
thing. Like if they say, for example, they win the first game, but they drop game two, like then you got to come back and you got to win three straight. And this has been a better pitching staff, but any pitching staff in college baseball, especially in postseason play, when you get into that situation where you lose a game early in the postseason, you've got to be really dialed in with the rest of your pitching. Like you've got to
Mhm.
rely on some hero, some unsung hero to come in and save you for one of those games. And I don't know who that might be for LSU. Do you have a guess at who that might have to be on the pitching staff? A guy or two that's maybe not on the current radar right now in terms of pitching this weekend, that if he has to be called upon in a really serious, tough situation, that he's just going to have to deliver?
I'm gonna go two.
Okay.
And when I say not on the radar, in normal SEC weekend, this guy is on the radar. But maybe in the regional where you feel like you could go pretty long with your starters. Maybe not Maverick Rizzi. I think Maverick Rizzi could be a guy where you feel like he, if you get in a pressure cooker situation, he might have to throw an inning or two, or maybe three, where you feel like, okay, we need you here. Like
Yeah.
we need you to grow up fast. And then maybe once again, I mean, he made a case, last week in Hoover. You probably hope you don't have to have him in a pivotal spot, Glenn. But I do think Jaden Newt has shown you as a guy that can give you some big innings. Now, I will before I go back to you on this, I wanted to ask you this because the show I was doing today, they kind of talked about it. They said, "Hey, is there a thought process of throwing Newt on, Friday and saving him?" And I listened. By the way, let's see, this is peers supporting peers. I listened to Glenn's hit today on 104.5 on the Hunt Palmer show, and you said, "Hey, look, Jay Johnson has a track record. He threw Skeens on that Friday night of the regional." And with the ability to keep guys on schedule, which they talked about that being so important for them in Hoover, is it just clear cut to you that Cade Anderson's going to be the guy getting the ball on Friday night, regardless of the fact that, yeah, look, we know it's a team that's, not great, but is playing good baseball right now, and they have a lot of respect. And, I'll let you answer that here, and I'm asking you because we're not allowed
Yeah.
to ask Jay Johnson, obviously.
Yeah. No, I think so. Like I am 85% sure it's going
Okay.
to be Anderson on Friday. Only from the fact that I think they're going to throw one of their two big guns. And just again, I am not diving deep into the bowels of Little Rock like Jay Johnson is right now,
Of
but
course.
4 of their 5 top hitters are left-handed guys. And I have a feeling that it's going to come down to a matchup decision here.
Mhm.
And Jay's going to look at this thing and say, all right, well, if we could just pummel these guys to the ground in one game and we only have to burn Kane Anderson for game one, like say LSU offense comes out on fire and they're able to put up 12, 13, 14 runs and Anderson's able to go out there and throw, 6, 7 shutout innings for you and you're able to run rule those guys in game one. Like I think that would be the ideal situation here because
Yeah.
that's what they did 2 years ago with Skeens. Skeens only pitched 7 innings in that game. LSU run ruled Tulane. Or no, they didn't run rule Tulane. I want to say no, Skeens pitched 9 innings in that game,
Yeah.
actually, and LSU beat them straight up. But maybe you can get another game like that from Cade Anderson where he goes 9, he goes the distance like he did a couple months ago in that performance. So, like, I think that they're going to go Anderson here. That would be my gut feeling without having asked Jay, just knowing how he's operated in the past, knowing how the players and he has spoken about this team in recent weeks. I think they want to get off to a fast start and they want to try to get this thing on the right course. And winning game one is the first step of many. And they talk about just playing the game in front of you, who gives you the best chance in front of you to win that game. And it's been Cade Anderson all season
Yeah.
long. I would expect it to be Cade Anderson on Friday afternoon getting that ball. But to go back to your earlier thing, when the question that I asked you, and you mentioned Jaden Newt, and who was the other one that you mentioned?
Maverick Rizzi.
Maverick Rizzi. I think both of those two are going to pitch regardless. Like I was thinking,
Yeah.
like a gravitas situation where you don't foresee you losing a game, but you drop a game, and all of a sudden you burn Zach Cowan or you burn Kason Evans, and you've got to go out there and win a game with your bullpen.
Connor
And
Ware.
Connor Ware was one that came to mind
Yeah.
for me. And the other one that came to mind for me was William Schmidt. And I know we haven't
Yeah.
seen William Schmidt in a while. The kid has got talent. He has a lot of talent, and you just never know how guys are going to respond with their backs up against the wall. William Schmidt's going to have to be a huge part of this program for the next couple of years, and things have not gone swimmingly for him this year. But if you get him in a game 4 or game 5, and he has to go out there and throw 2 or 3 innings for you, it looks a lot different if you're Dallas Baptist and you got 96, 97 still facing you on Monday, or if you're Rhode Island, or if you're Little Rock, if they make it to the final. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like there's different levels to this, and I think that he's somebody that honestly, like I could see if LSU gets in themselves into a situation here where they accidentally drop a game and they have to really rely on somebody. Um, I would think about it at least. I mean, he's got the velocity, he's got the talent, but the command has just not been there. So we'll have to just wait and see if that opportunity does pop up and what he does with it if it happens.
His last appearance, May 11th, against Arkansas. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, like you
it's been a
mentioned,
while.
it has been a while, and no, I like that option. And then I guess Connor Ware for me is another guy who like has
I
got some
think Connor, yeah,
experience. Yeah,
he
like
he pitched himself out of playing in the regional. Honestly, the way that he
yeah,
pitched against South Carolina last weekend, like
mhm.
barring something unforeseen like LSU losing a game, I don't know that he cracks the top 8 pitchers that LSU uses this weekend, and
Yeah,
hopefully 8's enough. Like if you just run
he was
down the
so good.
list: Anderson, Ianson, Evans, Cowan, Rizzi, Williams, Newt, and Shores. That's 8. So, is
Was
there anybody
Primo
else?
crazy? Primo crazy?
Primo could get you an out or two. Like
Yeah,
I wouldn't trust him probably more than an inning, because that's really what they've been asking him to do all season long. So
very situational
very
pitcher. Like
situational
yeah,
guy.
Cooper Williams.
Well, I said Cooper Williams. Yeah,
Okay,
he's one.
okay, yeah,
He's in that grouping. So yeah, I mean, like 8 should do it. Like if
yeah.
you're the that's how much they've been using the last couple weeks at least. I mean, they haven't really gone too much deeper than that. So that would be my guess. I feel like we talked about the pitching a lot. Is there any? We've talked offense a little bit, but I do think that the big X factor, and I wrote this in my 3 up, 3 down column on Monday, that the X factor for LSU's postseason success is going to have to come at the plate. And
Hmm.
who of that grouping really kind of steps up and kind of performs a lot better than they did in the regular season. And Steven Milam's the guy you talked about. I think that's a great pick. For me, I think it's Jake Brown. Like, I mean, if Jake Brown can just fulfill his potential and he's able to hit left-handed pitching at a more consistent rate, there's no way that he can be taken out of the lineup. And really,
Yeah,
it's coming down to those couple of guys. Like we know Stanfield's going to play, we know Carriel's going to play, we know Milam and Dickinson and Braswell and Jones and Hernandez / Aaron Beatty maybe, but that little grouping there of Jake Brown and Josh Pearson, which one of those two really kind of takes this postseason by the horns and just runs with it is going to be a huge X factor question for me. And I even Ethan Fry I think is locked up the DH spot.
yeah.
Like nobody's taking Fry out of that lineup at this point in the season. So really those two, Josh Pearson, Jake Brown, I think are going to be a couple of big X factors there, as well as somebody like Milam or Braswell overperforming than the way that they did during the regular season in SEC play.
I'll throw one more, and this isn't an underrated guy, but I think it's just an example of your star needs to play like a star. That's what wins you titles. Jared Jones.
Yeah,
Like I think it's not Jared Jones hasn't played bad, or I mean, but you kind of look at the numbers between SEC play and out of conference play. He's propped up a little bit by the out of conference numbers. I just think if you're going to win and you're going to win big, your stars have got to shine when the lights are the brightest, and he is no doubt, kind of the meat and potatoes there, I guess, with Ethan Fry in this lineup. And if Jones is hitting, when Jones is hitting, this lineup is no longer potent; they're scary.
yeah.
There's a fear. He's the kind of guy that puts a fear into an opposing pitcher. So I don't know, man. Offensively, I think, man, they could really benefit from a big weekend, and I like the names you listed there. There as
Man,
well.
I saw this question on our board today, and I honestly thought it was a great question and didn't really know how to answer it because I think we've seen so many different variations throughout the season. But somebody asked me like, do you mix up the lineup this weekend? Like, do you put
Mhm.
Jones back in that leadoff spot, or do you put Ethan Fry or Daniel Dickinson was the guy that he suggested you put in the leadoff spot, and you kind of tinker with some things in the lineup? And I was like, if I just don't know that we're in the place right now in the postseason where LSU needs to be tinkering with the order as much. Like I just think it's
Yeah.
got to come down to guys playing better when it matters most. And I don't know if Jay feels the same way. We'll find out this weekend. But to me, I wouldn't make any significant like we're going to move Chris Stanfield from 9 to 1 kind of things, or we're gonna put Derek Curiel in the 5 hole or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that anything like that's coming.
Yeah, I think there's enough data points to support that it works the way it's been working. Maybe not recently, and that's fair, but there's enough data points to go off of to the fact of where any type of major shakeup right now, it's one of those things. It feels like it could potentially do more harm than good. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're wrong on that. Maybe they shake it up and they lead off Michael Braswell, who God knows who they're going to lead off, and then it works, But it's just one
I
of those
believe
things. I think,
they might have let
yeah,
off with Braswell last year towards the end of the postseason. I mean, he was
yeah.
hitting pretty good. Milam too. Milam, I think, had some leadoff opportunities in the postseason, but those two have not been what they were towards the end of SEC play last year, and they need those two to step up as well.
It's gonna be a fun weekend in Alex Box, and man, the weather. I don't even know if I want to talk about it, but the weather is looming.
Yeah.
I guess this week and into the weekend. But hey, we'll have a fun weekend inside Alex Box. Postseason baseball is here. Baton Rouge is going to be buzzing this weekend, so make sure you head out to the game. And if you don't, you can follow along over at Go 24/7. Get that subscription. It's also, by the way, official visit season kicking off, so it's a great opportunity for you to get some baseball coverage, some football recruiting coverage, and man, before you know it, we are going to be rocking and rolling into the late summer and football. And it'd be kind of fun, Glenn, to see LSU and Clemson playing a regional in baseball, and then 2 months later face off
Well,
over there in Clemson, South Carolina.
here's a quick hypothetical situation that I posed to the board, and a couple of guys answered, and I all answered the same. I want to get your answer on this.
All right.
LSU plays Clemson next week in a super regional, and they win, and it secures you a national championship. Say that you beat Clemson, and it's going to make you a national champion in Omaha,
No matter what. Yeah.
no matter what. Or you beat Clemson on August 30th in football. Which one are you taking? You can only have one of the two.
The football one does not secure a national
Football
title.
one does not secure you a national championship.
I'm taking baseball.
Okay, yeah.
I'm taking baseball. The guarantee of the national title is too much. Like that's
Yeah. I had to throw that in there because then I think people would have just said, would you rather pick LSU baseball to beat Clemson or beat them in football? Like if I'd done just baseball or football, I think it would have been a pretty clear football
the
answer.
national title one's a big one.
But I honestly, I figured more people would be so devout about football. Like they would pick football and say like, we got to win that first game. I don't care what it takes. If it costs us a national championship in baseball, we got to win that first game.
They need to. No, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. That's a question, though. To answer some questions like that, make sure you hop on over to the Go 24/7 board and come hang out with us. It's going to be a fun weekend. Make sure you get rocking and rolling. We appreciate you tuning into the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe as well, and set up those notifications so you know when we post the latest episodes. And then also, too, if you're listening on those podcast platforms, we appreciate you there as well. He is Glen West. My name is Bryce Koon. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.